There is a life you sometimes imagine, not every day, usually in the quiet moments, late at night, on a long commute, in the space between what you are doing and what you thought you would be doing by now. The career you might have chosen, the language you wanted to learn, the thing you wanted to build, the version of yourself you thought you would become. And then comes the sentence that ends the thought before it can become anything. I should have started 10 years ago. Maybe you should have, but you didn't, and no amount of looking backward can move the starting line. So here is the only question that actually matters. What is your brain still capable of becoming from here? Before this episode offers you anything like hope, it needs to offer you something more valuable: honesty. Because the story most people tell about aging and the brain is one of two equally inaccurate things. The first is a story of simple decline. The brain peaks somewhere in your 20s and the rest is a long, slow descent toward less speed, less memory, less capacity, less possibility. The second is a story of false reassurance. Age is just a number. You can do anything you want at any stage of life. The only limit is your belief. Both of these stories are wrong, and both of them, in different ways, can prevent a person from making accurate decisions about what is still genuinely possible. This episode is not going to tell you that age doesn't matter. It does. The brain at 45 is not identical to the brain at 22. Some things change. Some things become slower. Some things become harder in ways that are real and measurable and worth understanding. But different is not finished. And the gap between those two words is larger than most people realize. The life you imagine, the one that began 10 years earlier, has a particular quality that your actual life does not. It never failed. The imaginary version of you who started at 25 never had a bad week, never changed direction, never encountered circumstances they couldn't have anticipated, never grew tired, never had to compromise. That person exists only as a projection, a potential, a dream that never had to survive contact with reality. And you are comparing your actual life with all its real decisions and real constraints and real consequences to a version of a life that never had to be lived. This is one of the quieter cruelties of regret. Not that the past could have been different, but that the imaginary alternative is always somehow perfect. Now, here is what the science actually shows about the aging brain. Some cognitive capacities do change across adulthood. Processing speed, how quickly the brain can take in and respond to new information, may begin to slow gradually during early adulthood and continue changing across the lifespan. Working memory, the ability to hold information in mind while doing something with it, shows age-related changes in many people. Certain aspects of fluid intelligence, the capacity to solve genuinely novel problems, to adapt quickly to unfamiliar material, to process information without relying on accumulated knowledge, may be harder to sustain at the same level with age. These are real differences. They are not invented by pessimists or manufactured by people who want older adults to give up. But here is what is equally true. Crystallized intelligence, the accumulated knowledge, vocabulary, expertise, pattern recognition and understanding that develops through years of experience often remains strong and can continue developing across adulthood. The brain at 45 has something the brain at 22 does not: structure, depth, a vast network of existing knowledge that new information can connect to, be organized by, and be understood through. A younger brain may be able to process an unfamiliar idea more quickly. An older brain may understand it more deeply. The question is not which brain is universally superior. The question is what each brain can bring to the learning it is doing. You may not learn with the same brain you had at 20, but you are not learning with an empty one. In the early 2000s, Eleanor Maguire and her colleagues at University College London published something that permanently changed how neuroscientists think about adult brain plasticity. They studied the hippocampi of London taxi drivers, people who had spent years memorizing the extraordinarily complex street network of one of the world's most labyrinthine cities. What they found was a measurable structural difference. The posterior hippocampus, a region critically involved in spatial navigation and memory, was on average larger in the taxi drivers than in matched controls. And the longer someone had been driving, the more pronounced the difference. The adult brain, in response to years of intense, specific, meaningful practice, had physically changed. Not the brain of a child, not the brain of a 20-year-old student, the brain of an adult working hard at something that mattered for long enough to leave a trace. This is not a promise that any effort will produce any outcome. It is evidence that the adult brain is not done responding to what is asked of it. The brain does not ask for your date of birth before it begins to change. It responds to what you repeatedly require it to do. There is a question worth sitting with carefully here. If adult neuroplasticity is real, if the brain continues to change in response to experience across the lifespan, then why do so many people stop learning after a certain age? Not because they cannot tolerate being bad at something. This is one of the most psychologically precise observations about adult learning. A child learning to read expects to be incompetent. Incompetence is the normal condition of childhood. It generates no particular shame. But a 45-year-old who is respected, accomplished, competent in at least some domains, that person faces something entirely different when they become a beginner. Sitting in a classroom with people half their age, making mistakes in front of others, moving through material slowly that they expected to grasp quickly, feeling what it is like to not know something, in a life organized around knowing. The brain can handle this. The identity sometimes cannot. Being a beginner for an accomplished adult can feel like becoming nobody again. And so the most common reason an adult does not begin is not that they lack the capacity. It is that they are protecting a self-concept they have spent decades constructing. The thing that stops most adults from learning is not age. It is the intolerance of being seen by themselves at the beginning of something. This brings us to what may be the most quietly powerful idea in this episode. The story you have been telling about your capacity is not a neutral description. It is a prediction your brain has started to act on. I'm not a language person. I'm too old to change careers. My memory isn't what it was. This kind of thing isn't for me. These are not merely observations about the past. They are instructions about what to attempt, about where to direct attention, about when to persist and when to stop. The belief influences what you try. What you try influences what you practice. What you practice gives the brain something to adapt to, or doesn't. And over time, the belief generates the evidence that appears to confirm it. The most dangerous thing about believing it is too late is not the belief. It is every practice session the belief prevented. Every beginning the belief made feel pointless before it started. Every version of yourself that was never attempted because the story said there was no point in beginning. So what does the research actually support for the person who wants to begin again? Not a list of life hacks. Not 7 steps to a younger brain, something more honest than that. The adult brain changes in response to demand, not intention, not watching inspiring content, not deciding you are going to try. Demand, focused attention, meaningful challenge, error and correction, repetition with sufficient recovery, returning to material before it has fully faded, so the brain has to reconstruct it, making the learning slightly harder than is comfortable, because comfortable practice often does not produce the kind of signal the brain needs to reorganize itself. These conditions are available to an adult in a way they are available to almost no child. An adult can design their own practice. They can understand why certain methods work. They can connect new material to the deep structure of existing knowledge in ways that accelerate understanding. They can choose what matters enough to sustain difficulty. A younger brain may learn some things faster. An adult brain, given the right conditions, can learn more deliberately. One more thing is worth saying clearly. Sleep matters here as much as practice. The brain does not consolidate what it learned during the day while you are still using it. It consolidates during sleep, replaying, organizing, transferring experience into more durable form. An adult who sleeps poorly and practices intensely may make less progress than an adult who practices with more care and protects their recovery. The conditions around learning are not optional. They are part of the learning. Now, return to the sentence that began this episode. I should have started 10 years ago. Let's accept it. Maybe you should have. Maybe starting earlier would have changed something real. But here is the only thing that sentence has never managed to change. Time. 10 years from now, you will be 10 years older. Not because you failed to start earlier, because time passes. The question is not whether the years will go by. They will.
The question is what your brain will have spent those years practicing. At 40, you wish you had started at 30. At 50, you may wish you had started at 40. And somewhere, in some quiet moment 10 years from now, you may look back at the person watching this episode today and realize that this was not the end of the window. It was another window, one you were standing in front of, trying to decide whether to open it. Return one last time to the ceiling. 2 hands, 2 fingers. The gap. In this episode, the gap is not between who you are and who you might have become if you had started earlier. That version of you is not on the other side. They were never there. The real gap is between the person watching this now and the person this brain could still be building toward. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, the gap cannot be crossed yesterday. It can only be crossed from here. You cannot become the person you would have been if you had started 10 years ago, but the person you could become by starting today is still being decided, and nothing has yet determined who that person will be. Nothing except what you ask your brain to practice next. Every neuron remembers, every thought changes you, every choice rewrites you. The gap is still there, the spark is still crossing. So become.